How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious dear that grace appeared the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns. Unending love, amazing grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Many years ago in Thailand, there was a temple that was called the Temple of the Golden Buddha. And there was a huge statue of the Golden Buddha. And word came to this village where the monastery was that an army from a neighboring country was about to invade. And they got the brilliant scheme to cover the Golden Buddha, which is quite large, with mud and concrete so that it looked basically like a stone Buddha, and the army would perceive no value in it. And sure enough, this army rolled in with its caissons and weapons. And as they passed by the monastery, they saw nothing but a big stone Buddha, and they had no reason to plunder it. Well, years went by because the army continued to occupy it, until there was a time in the monastery in the village when no one remembered that the Buddha was golden, until one day a young monk was sitting on the Buddha meditating on his knee. And as he got up, a little piece of concrete happened to crack off, and he saw something shiny. He realized there was gold under there. And so he ran to his fellow monks and said, "The Buddha's golden, the Buddha's golden." They all came out and they realized he was telling the truth, and they took their picks and hammers, and eventually they unearthed the golden Buddha. Now, what's the metaphor here? The metaphor is that each of us is golden by nature. We were born golden. We were born high. We were born knowing. We were born connected to our bliss. We were born knowing truth. We were born knowing everything that every great spiritual master has ever said. We were one with the Christ, the Buddha, everyone. But then we went to school and they said you have to dress like this, and this is what boys do, and this is what girls do, this is what black people do, this is what white people do, on and on and on. And so we developed a casing of stone over the Buddha to a point where at a young age, maybe 4, 5, 6, or 7, we believed that we were the stone Buddha, not the golden one. And then something comes along that cracks our casing. Maybe it's an injury, a divorce, a financial setbacks, a governmental change, something that really scares us and bugs us and knocks off a piece of our armor. And only in that moment of the armor being knocked off do you get to look inside and see the gold. And let me tell you, friend, that the moment you see that gold, the armor and the concrete will never satisfy you again. At that point, you truly enter the true hero's adventure. And all you want to do for the rest of your life is pick away the stone, because the gold is so much more fun.
The good news is that we have an immutable core. Immutable. They recognize that we have an immutable core. That's the gold that they want to get to. I want to remember because now I understand that I need to remember. I brought up a memory from Bohemian Grove. I was 11 years old. I was naked. I was strung up with my arms and legs outstretched. And these guys were drunk and they were just laughing and they just thought it was just so funny that I was terrified. So this satanic stuff is really real. What they do with a small child is they put them through trauma. Sexual abuse is key to that. I was used by both men and women. I do remember that. I remember being carted away by my father in potato sacks, in boxes, in suitcases, and put in the trunk to be delivered to these people to do what they did. I do remember being put through electric shock and trying to plead with the people, at least telepathically, please don't do this. But the person with the clipboard just had absolutely no feeling for me as a human being. I remembered the ritual when I was 5 years old, where I was naked, tied down to a stone altar, and there were 3 hooded figures standing over me, and I realized that they were saying, "We can't break her, we can't break her." I was ready for the soul retrieval, and what happened was not only did I retrieve the soul piece that left me during that ritual, but from every other previous lifetime where I had been tortured. He said, "I wish you could see what I see. It's like a big light show, all of these stars like coming from everywhere and just coming back into your body." So it was a very emotional, beautiful experience. I was crying, from the grace. It was very beautiful. My intention for this video is to help other people and to give them hope, no matter what their trauma background. And so now I have to go into my credentials. I got the PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. So I have an extreme trauma background, and it was through MK Ultra Project Monarch program, which according to some is still active today, and so the other intent is to raise awareness so that these people can get help. So what it entailed was, well, first of all, I was born in Santa Rosa, California, which was a major center And a lot of my experiences were in the Presidio and Bohemian Grove.
What's the Presidio?
The Presidio is in San Francisco. And how did I get into this program? It was through my father's connection in the Navy, and he would be considered what some people call a handler. So he was responsible for me being in the program. I also have a brother who was part of the program, who's younger than me. So here are my credentials. Yes, I was sexually abused by my father from infancy. I probably experienced trauma during the fetal stages because that's very typical. I was probably born with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, so I never really knew what it was like to be quote-unquote normal. So that was a little difficult with recovery because there's no memory of where to go back to. So I was prostituted, so I was used by both men and women. I was experimented upon. I do remember electric shock. I remember being subjected to strobe lights and so forth. There were lots of experiments.
Experimental drugs, I believe.
Experimental drugs, too. I was used in satanic rituals from a very young age, and I remember going through an initiation ritual at age 3 that involved somebody forcing me to drink blood. I remember age 5 being strapped to a slab, and the intent was to take my soul. And then an incident at Bohemian Grove where I was forced to watch a child sacrifice. So memories are still coming up, and I will address that part of the recovery because it's not like, it's hard to say where the end will be. And so this is something that people in trauma recovery need to understand, is that we're so goal-oriented, we feel like, well, we have to be there. And I found out that there's a process, and I don't know how long the process will go. Maybe it will happen my entire lifetime. But it's about learning mastery of how to face these things as they come up. Because the memories were so horrific, then what I did is I suppressed them. And I had amnesia about my childhood for many, many, many years. And then the memories started to resurface. And because they'd been suppressed for so long, there was a huge reaction. And I'll describe that process later.
The experiences that you had when you were a child, you said that they pretty much started right from the moment you were born or earlier. Mm-hmm. But then they lasted until what age?
They lasted till about age 11 or 12. My father passed away when I was 13 of cancer, so he was quite sick for the last year or two. So I feel that that's what dropped me out of the program.
Otherwise, you might not even have been able to escape at all, I guess.
Yeah, who knows? I probably would have still been in the program until whenever, yeah.
What was the motivation for your coming forward now publicly after all these years?
I decided years ago when I was going through a horrific TMJ experience, and if people don't know what that is temporomandibular joint disorder, where it causes great pain in the head and it's hard to think. At the time I was looking through things to help me and to find stories of people who had overcome it, and I couldn't. So I made the intention way back then, before I'd uncovered memories, that I wanted to help people who'd been through traumatic pain, a chronic pain. And now I have even a bigger reason, is I wanted to come out to show people it is possible. It is possible to recover enough to have a fulfilling life
and to actually reach a point of transformation. It feels like I went through the darkest of the dark so that I could transform it into light. And that light could be a beacon for other people so that they could transform whatever darkness they experienced into light. And I feel that we're all in this together, and so we're here to help each other. So I wanted to provide something that would give people hope and inspiration, no matter what their trauma background and no matter where they are in their healing process, and also to give hope, especially to other survivors of mind control programs, where they're put through a lot of torture and abuse, and for them to know that it's possible to reclaim their humanity. And there is a choice. We can choose to make our past, keep our past as our pain, or we can take our past and make it into our power in the present. And so we can draw our power from that. And but for years I didn't know this was a choice. You see, we have to, if we don't know it's a choice, then we can't make the choice. But if we know there's a choice, then we can go, oh yeah, I can choose transformation. I don't have to stay in the pain. Now, making the decision that you're going to leave the pain behind and move into the present and then into the future doesn't make it vanish. My journey took many, many, many years of a lot of hard work. But what I'd like to say is that hard work is worth it. It's worth it.
Imagine, for example, that you've got somebody who've experienced any kind of trauma you can imagine, and they're feeling like a victim. They're feeling that there's no hope. They're feeling like nobody understands. They're feeling that they don't understand why this happened to them. What are the steps that they need to go through in order to commit themselves to the journey that you've been on for quite a long time now?
Well, first of all, you have to believe that recovery is possible. If you don't believe it's possible, then you're not going to do what's necessary. You also need determination, and determination is recommitting over and over again, because this is not a linear process. There were so many times when I became disappointed because I expected recovery to be a linear process, and we are very goal-oriented. We're taught to be goal-oriented. I remember finding myself saying so many times, oh, if I could just get there, if I could just be there, and there's no getting there. It's all about, I've found out over time that it's about mastering the moment. So when these memories pop up, these suppressed memories pop up, and you have to deal with them, and sometimes they can be very horrific, learning how to master your reaction to that. So my process, my personal process was, I want to say that the healing process is very cyclical. And for the longest time, I was in this cycle of pain and denial, pain and denial. And one of the things I have to tell people is make pain your friend, because pain is just there as a messenger. So we just need to pay attention to what is the pain really trying to tell us here. But for years I was in pain and denial because I didn't know. I had no clue that I had this background. The next step was going into the pain and discovery and then shock. And this would be another cycle, because now when memories started coming up, I call that the discovery. But because I didn't know they were there, and the nature of these memories was so horrific, and I thought, well, this is impossible that this stuff could happen, I went through this pain discovery shock cycle. Now, all this time, I would define that period of being in victim mode. I didn't realize that I was thinking like a victim. I was acting like a victim. I was a victim. And that's what happens to a lot of people who've experienced trauma for a long period of time. Then they start to feel victimized. And they will recreate trauma in the absence of a trauma coming into their experience. They'll recreate trauma in their life, and which is a very perplexing thing until you understand that it actually helps them survive because of serotonin. Somebody who has gone through a long period of trauma learns to create their serotonin from trauma and drama. And we need serotonin to live. So if you may wave a magic wand and you take the drama and trauma out of their lives, they will die. They will die because they need that serotonin. Now, realizing this was a wake-up call for me. Oh gosh, I'm recreating this stuff. This is after I'm out of the major trauma that I had as a child. In my adulthood, I continued to experience trauma over and over and over again, at a more understandable level. You know, lots of bizarre things happening and so forth. And then when I understood that I had this need to survive, because this is my only way to get this serotonin, I had to learn how to create serotonin from different things. And that's when I decided to get serotonin from looking at butterflies and sunsets. And so I'd intentionally look at a butterfly and go, "Oh, I'm all excited about this. I'm getting a lot." You know, it took time, and then little by little, I could wean myself from being a victim, from getting my serotonin from drama and trauma. And as I was transitioning, I found out that the types of movies I was attracted to shifted. I didn't want to watch movies that had so much drama in them. And so this was an indicator to me that I had this internal shift. This is what enabled me to start shifting out of victim. And I think a lot of trauma experiencers are still caught in victim. And you don't even have to be a trauma experiencer to feel victimized. I mean, you can feel victimized by the economy and so forth. So, I mean, this is like more low-level type trauma. And that shift happens when you understand that you can take responsibility for your own healing. And you're going to take responsibility for your reactions. And you will take responsibility. I had to take responsibility, for instance, when I realized when I was going through a major healing process. It started in the year 2000. I realized that my children experienced having an absent mother because I was so ill. And that was because of, the effects of suppressing the memories. And so I was what you would classify as a self-absorbed parent. And it wasn't by my conscious choice that I ignored them. It was just that I couldn't devote my time to them that they needed. And so I went to them and I apologized. I said, I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry. And I know you needed this. This is claiming responsibility. It's not saying, okay, all this stuff happened to me, and so this is how, I did things. Well, I claim responsibility for the fact that my children missed out. And I approached each of them and I apologized. And I said, now you're going to have to do reparenting to yourself because you didn't get what you needed from me. And so that was one of the forms of taking responsibility, how it came up for me, and also taking responsibility for my healing process, that I was going to drive it. I wasn't going to just land on somebody's doorstep and say, heal me, because you have to have a great amount of intention in order for you to self-actualize. This is all about self-actualization and self-empowerment. And if you take it on, it can be a fantastic journey.
So part of the pathology of being a victim and continually recreating or remanifesting traumatic events in one's life is actually a kind of internal biochemical addiction that that in some weird way it's stimulating, it's enlivening, and it's kind of familiar.
Yes.
And so one seeks to recreate the familiar because one doesn't really know how to function in any other context. Is that right?
Yes, and I'm glad you talked about the familiar, because here's another curious thing that happens is when you're ready to let go of pain and you finally healed a certain incident, if you will, or a certain aspect of an incident, and then you let go of that pain, you can go into grief. You can go into grief because that pain was your partner for so long, even though it was something you didn't like. When it left, you'd go into grief.
It's missing from your life.
It's missing, and so that was another very curious part that was puzzling. But once you understand it, that anything that's in your environment for a long time and that is familiar, you can experience grief over that. And I think that's one of the hard choices that people have to make about transformation, because it's so much easier to choose to stay in the pain that you're familiar with than to choose to go into transformation. And we haven't even gotten to that stage yet. I've just described getting out of the victim portion and shifting, and transformation happens a little bit further. And it's cyclical, so these things all can cycle back. So since I mentioned the shift, is that shift in awareness that, okay, I am a powerful creative being, and even though this pain keeps coming up, I am still powerful. So then I would go into a new cycle where I would have the pain, the discovery, and now, oh, I see what happened. Oh, I see what's going on here. Instead of pain, discovery, shock, oh my gosh, because that's what happens in the beginning. But that's what I talk about. What I mean about mastering the moment is when a memory comes up or a trigger comes up, then when you've developed a certain amount of mastery to go, okay, I'm discovering this, I feel the pain, but I also, I understand, I see this. And so now when you get into this mode, then you can start moving into forgiveness. And you can go back and look at these incidences like they're a movie that have nothing to do with you. You're just watching this movie on the screen and you're going, oh, and then you're seeing all the players. And you can say, oh, it's all fine. It's all fine. And then you can send forgiveness to everyone in that scene. And to me, one day it came to me, a definition for forgiveness is love looking at an incident without assigning blame. So I can go back to all of the characters, all of the players who did all these different things to me and feel forgiveness. Now, because I have done that doesn't mean that I don't have further work to do, because then sometimes I'll still get triggered. A memory will come up, but then I deal with it and I go through the cycle of the, oh, I see, and then I can move into forgiveness. And then when we start to move into this zone of forgiveness, that's when we really start to feel the transformation, and we start to see that, oh, actually what happened in my life was a gift. Because now I really understand my true power. If we have, for instance, a story about a hero who wants to, and we want to display his courage, he has to have something courageous to do. That's where courage comes. If nothing happens, there's no courage, there's no virtue. So when a person can get to this point of forgiveness and transformation, then what happens is all of that information becomes empowering, and it sounds crazy to somebody who's far from that, and it was a distant idea for me when I was way back into my victim cycle, especially the victim cycle. But having that shift happen where you go, okay, I truly understand that I am in control of my recovery process. And and having said that, I said, I am in control of my recovery process. You don't do it alone. It takes a village. You get support. You grab support from every vector you can. And it's essential. It's essential for a recovery to choose and take a spiritual path. I personally don't believe that it's possible without addressing the spiritual aspect of yourself, because I believe we're spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. And it's a very essential component to recovery.
So the reason why that's important then is because if you're a spiritual being having a human experience, when the human has interesting or challenging or problematic experiences, then that is a gift because it enables the spirit to have the opportunity to grow even further.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be, well, it is. It is a very wondrous experience to move into transformation. And I'll have to have a footnote here, just by saying that you've experienced transformation. It doesn't mean that you've reached this pinnacle where you never go back into going into these other cycles, because it is not a linear path. So I can say that I have experienced transformation, but sometimes I have to slip back into these other little cycles. And that's all perfect, because then I'm able to learn more each time I go back into one of those cycles. But then these cycles do not, they don't blow me over the way they did in the beginning. I would just feel re-victimized when I was in that victim mode. And so now if something comes up, I go, oh, wow, this is a cool discovery. And, I can probably help somebody with this.
Now with that, you're talking about, for instance, as an example, recalling something even more from your childhood that you weren't aware of, like waking up and thinking, oh my God, that happened as well. Oh my God, now I've got to deal with that too. But all your previous experience of dealing with things that had come up for you that you didn't even know were there at the time help you in doing this one more time even more effectively than you were doing so at first.
Yeah, it's not the oh my God reaction anymore. It's like, oh my goodness, there's something else here, and let's go see. And I can still go into, when I re-experience it, I can still feel the fear, but it's not in my head. I feel the fear as a body reaction. The memory, this is another thing to know, is the memories are recorded in the body. And so even though at a cognitive level, I'm not afraid, my body will go into fear. And so I have to ask, well, why has my body gone into fear now? Let's go investigate that. And so you become like a Sherlock Holmes. And it can become like a game.
So you're saying that your body acts as a kind of messenger for you because it will sometimes react before you do, so to speak. And you'll wake up in the morning maybe feeling frightened about something. And then that gives you the opportunity to ask, all right, what's happening here? What's all this about? What's your body trying to tell you? And then you can take a look from a dispassionate point of view, and that's when the Sherlock Holmes bit comes in.
Yes, and sometimes it will come up as a fear response in the body, but it can also come up as a pain, a specific pain, like I'll feel a stabbing pain or whatever. And this comes from the research of Peter Levine with somatics. That was one of the first alternative modalities that I investigated, trying to find out what are all these body signals. This is when I had suppressed memories. I didn't know what was swimming around in my head, but I sure had these body sensations that didn't have any explanation, any logical explanation in real time.
But they were undeniably real, so you had to pay attention to them.
Yes, and so I started out using the methods of Peter Levine in the beginning, but then when that brought up memories that would make me go berserk in my head, if you will, then I had to find somebody to talk to. And so that was the beginning of my process of trying to figure out what's all this crazy stuff that's going on. You know, why do I have fibromyalgia? You know, TMJ. It's been a while, so I can't remember all the ailments. I just collected all kinds of ailments that had to do with chronic fatigue and chronic pain, and they were all based on suppressed memories.
Right. So just going back to what you were saying earlier about being a kind of absent mother for your children, if you like, and you said that you were ill. It wasn't that like you were in bed all the time or something, but it was basically chronic fatigue and chronic pain that made you unable to function as you would have wished. Is that right?
Well, I was in bed quite a bit, actually. And I was experiencing, especially through the TMJ period, I experienced extreme pain. And so it was very difficult when somebody has extreme pain in their head. It's very difficult to even follow conversations and just think. So there were periods of time when I really was not functional. I couldn't cook or go shopping, doing just normal everyday living things. There were periods of time when I was like that. And I remember a period of 2 years when I just couldn't talk to hardly anybody. I couldn't even talk on the phone. So we're talking very, very, I was so ill, if you will, that my children thought that I was dying of cancer and that I was hiding it from them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and I would just muscle my way through getting things done. I would still do things. This is another message to people that are going through trauma recovery. One of the things that happens is you start to have a self-image of a damaged person, and you start to feel like you're worthless at some level. And I remember having those feelings quite a bit. And looking back, even though I couldn't function at normal levels, like, you know, my son just wanted me to just be able to toss a ball with him, and I couldn't, you know, really simple stuff. And I felt, you know, there are all kinds of emotions attached to that. But looking back, I realized that, well, even though I was at that level of functionality, I still did accomplish some things. And so this is what I invite people to do, no matter where they are on their healing trajectory, is to honor themselves and say, oh yeah, even though this is the state I'm in right now, I'm still able to do this and this and this and this. I'm still able to at least say I love you, to my child or whatever. And so I had to go through that process of when I was in the later stages of recovery to acknowledge myself along the way.
Right. And it's important to say as well, I think, because there may be some people watching this who are wondering, oh my God, what happened to her children? But your children are in good shape, are they not?
Yeah. I call them my A-team.
And they helped you and you helped them, but you're very much like a really close tribe, as I understand it, the four of you together. And they have not suffered in a victimized way because of this. So you're very, very close to them, aren't you?
Yeah, and I attribute that to my parenting style, because I never saw myself as their mother. I saw myself as their partner. Since they were babies, I looked at them as my teachers from the very beginning. I never saw myself as superior. And so they became my friends in that sense. And whatever I've taught them, then they throw back at me now. And so that means they were listening.
That's very lovely. They're adult children, aren't they?
They're adults now.
Yeah.
They're adults. Yeah.
Adults.
Yeah.
That's my Englishness.
Yeah, tomato.
Exactly. Okay, very good. So I don't know whether now might be the right point in this conversation to be addressing, let's say, somebody who might be listening to this, who are thinking, oh my God, I'm on this journey too. Maybe I haven't made all the progress that Cathy seems to have made. I'm somewhere in the middle of all of this, and I'm still feeling that life's against me. I'm still feeling that nobody understands. I'm still wrestling with trying to come to terms with what might have happened to me, whatever it was, whether they're a Vietnam vet or whether they were a victim of satanic ritual abuse. If you talk to those people here who are watching this, what counsel could you give them? What are the main things that you could really itemize above and beyond what you've already said?
What would my advice be to these people? I remember what it was like being in that pain, discovery, shock cycle. And when you are in a state of chronic pain, and it can be emotional pain or physical pain, that can cause a sense of isolation. And also feeling like you're victimized causes a sense of isolation and this sense of I'm all alone. And I suspect that's where these people might be. And the first thing I would tell them is you are not alone. And I've told people over and over again that I don't feel that my story is personal. It would only be personal if I was the only person who experienced this. This is not a personal story. There are thousands, if not millions of people who have gone through these things. And so this is not personal. We are all in this together. So what I invite these people to do is to gather a support team. And by having this interview, I want to expand this support team, especially for people who are recovering from mind control, for instance, and satanic ritual abuse, because these are not recognized by most professionals. So that can also contribute to another level of isolation if people say, oh, you're crazy, this couldn't have happened to you, and I went through that myself. And then you start to feel like you're crazy. So my message to these people is that, yes, now hopefully there are people who have spoken about these things as survivors. But I don't think that they spoke about this in the same vein as I am. I'm focusing on the recovery process. Other people that I've been able to read about are focused on the actual experiences. So I'm just hoping that this can expand people's awareness in general, because when we know something, when we put the spotlight of truth on things that are happening to people, then that enables us to deal with them and transform them and create a new world, the world that we really want to live in. What else would I tell somebody who is in that? Did I say to create a support system? Yeah. And to know that it's possible. For somebody who's at that stage, to look at me and try to imagine what it's like to be at my stage is very, very difficult. It's very difficult. But at least if they can see that I'm here and that I've done it and that I'm there to root them on, then if they can just keep up with the determination. I love the line from Galaxy Quest, never give up, never surrender. And that leads me into another thing, is another essential component for recovery is a sense of humor. You've got to bring in a sense of humor, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take something that's dark and heavy and make it light. And so a sense of humor is absolutely essential.
You mean not light like trivial, but like literally like bringing the light into the dark?
Exactly, not like trivial. And many people know about the case of Norman Cousins, who cured himself of cancer watching comedies or whatever it was, and things that made him laugh.
I think it was the Marx Brothers.
That wouldn't be my choice, but so yes, you need a sense of humor. So when you're in this realm, if you will, of recovery, you might tend to want to watch things that are more depressing because it will be in resonance with where you are.
That's the familiar again.
That's the familiar. If you're depressed, you're going to be attracted to more depressing things. And so you're going to need to satisfy that need a little bit, but if you could wean yourself from that and start selecting things to watch and to listen to that are more inspirational and make you laugh and do crazy stuff like learn how to tell jokes and be creative. Be creative. There are a gazillion different ways.
And it's also about the choice of people that you want to spend your time with, I guess. It's not just watching movies, but being with people who make you feel uplifted and entertaining.
Okay, well, this is kind of a two-way street, because if you're depressed, you're not fun to be around. So you're going to be in isolation, or you're going to be attracting more depressed people into your experience. So if you can be mindful of the type of people who are in your environment and go and make an assessment and go, oh yeah, all my friends are depressed and they're into drama and trauma. That's an indication to me. That's another avenue of
It's another piece of feedback from the universe, isn't it? It's like if you look around at the people who seem to be your entourage, and
Yes.
that seems to be telling a story, then that's a mirror to some degree. What do you say?
Exactly, yes. And so then you can look at that mirror and say, do I like that? And then you start mindfully choosing people who are uplifting and who are positive thinkers and who are creative.
Right. And because it's important for them to be wanting to be with you, then that offers the challenge of the choice for yourself about how to be valuable and interesting and of service to others rather than being obsessed with yourself.
Yes, so that's an incentive for you to work out of your depression, because depression is a big part of this. because it feels like there's obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And that's where the determination comes in, that you have to recommit over and over and over again. It's not just the original commitment, yes, I want to go to transformation. It's like, no, you have to recommit all the time, almost every moment, sometimes there in the beginning.
It's like that place of commitment that you need to stand in actually becomes a challenge for yourself very regularly. It's part of the cycle.
Right, and sometimes you will feel overwhelmed. And that's when you feel like tossing your hands up and going, I'm never going to get anywhere. These thoughts, kind of trickle in. And what I do during those cycles is I acknowledge the fact that, yes, sometimes this does feel like a big job and that it might be too big. Then I just call it battle fatigue. I go, okay, this is just battle fatigue. I'll get up again. But for right now, I'll just, lay my arms down to rest and rest. And then the feeling passes eventually, usually within a day. And now, if it happens, it just happens for a few minutes at a time. And so I just call it battle fatigue. You can call it whatever you want to, just to give it a label that assigns it a temporary place in your experience, that it's not going to be, okay, I'm going to give up. It says, okay, this is just temporary. And then I can move on. And you get up again and you do it again and again and again. And that's where mastering the moment comes in. That maybe you won't get, I don't know if it's ever that top of the mountain analogy. I don't know if that ever exists, but at least you go higher and higher up the mountain and you get a better and better view. And then you're just happy with the view that you've got. Just be happy. Oh, I can see, instead of staying in the valley of pain, you've gone a little bit up the mountain, and just appreciate yourself for going that far up the mountain. And appreciate yourself every step of the way. And self-love. Self-love is another essential thing. And that's another kind of recommitment. Because you can't love anybody else. You can't really be of service to anybody else unless you have that self-love. You can't give something away that you don't have. And this is part of the process. Because when somebody's been through trauma, sometimes they can end up, or many times they can end up devaluing themselves and actually hating themselves.
Even thinking that they must have deserved it or something like that.
Yes, especially, a child being abused by a parent. Children will look at parents as gods. And so if a parent does something to a child that is bad or damaging, then the child will believe that they deserved it. They must have done something to deserve it because their parents are gods. And so then that concept is rooted in that person's subconscious in adulthood. And so they've taken on this self-image that, there's something wrong with me. So there's that journey of self-love, which it doesn't matter what your background is. I think that's everybody's journey, is to learn to love yourself. And that's another very essential component.
And there's another aspect to this, and that's what some people call karma. That it could be mistakenly believed by some people that, oh my God, I've got all these bad things happen to me this lifetime, so I must have done something really bad earlier in order to bring this on myself. Which I would say is an enormous spiritual elephant trap that is just not necessarily valid, because in your instance, I believe that you are as certain as you can be that you chose to experience this stuff so that you could embark on this extraordinary journey and end up helping others. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my belief. Yes. I believe that I went through the darkest of the dark so that I could transform it and help other people transform their lives. And I don't know, it's pretty nerdy. Could have chosen something else.
Well, people choose all kinds of things for reasons best known to themselves.
Yeah, when I started exploring that, I go, what was I thinking? Oh, but now that I've gotten this far along, I'm going, okay, all right. I'm feeling satisfied and empowered, and
maybe you're thinking, well, you know what? I don't have to do this one again.
I don't know. I'll have to have a discussion with with who's in charge.
Maybe. Well, no, but this is an important point. Maybe you're in charge. Maybe you decide whether the experience is.
Yeah. Well, that's where I go. What was I thinking?
Right. I mean, this is the whole message here, that it's up to us. It's not up to anybody else.
Exactly.
Now, just to talk about something slightly more sobering, but which is important because it belongs in this conversation, I think. Okay. Earlier on, we're talking about the challenges that we are presented with in this kind of situation, and then need to deal with in an effective way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what some people could call the suicide trigger, which is part of the programming. Mm-hmm. And I think Cathy O'Brien, if I understand it right, this is something that Cathy O'Brien mentions. It is understood by those who have researched this whole phenomenon that there's like a self-destruct program that is instilled in what could be called, for lack of a better word, sex slaves or whatever, that actually they're going to self-destruct when they're about 30.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually went through this and you survived that too. Could you just mention that, not from a point of view of, oh my God, this is a terrible story, but once again, there may be people watching this who are wrestling with this sometimes.
Yeah, well, I find it very fascinating that it could be done to begin with. I mean, wow. I mean, there's so much we don't know about the human brain and the body and all of that. It's amazing. What happened was I mean, there was a 3-month period where I was just obsessed with taking my life. But the overriding thought was, oh, I have children. Who's going to be their mother? And that's what kept me going. Actually, I was trying to see if I could find somebody to be a replacement mom so that I could exit. And but I was so ill at the time that it wasn't possible. So my remembrance is that this happened for about 3 months, and I was very curious, and I attribute it to the fact that I was going through a lot of pain with the TMJ, but I'd gone through a lot of pain before and after that period. And so when I read about this phenomena, I go, oh yeah, that happened. And then I talked to my brother. I have one sibling who went through this with me. I grew up in a household with 3 other siblings. And my brother reported the same thing, and he survived that impulse for the same reasons, because he had children.
At the same age?
Around the age of 30.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. It feels to me that it's important just to flag that up, because once again, it's part of the message that you were mentioning earlier, that people who feel this, and now I've never experienced this myself, but I'm assuming that if one is feeling like ending one's life, then one couldn't be more alone at that point, but one is not. It's like this is part of the program. Maybe a lot of people have got this implanted in them. It's a self-destruct thing. We have choice at all moments, and there may be others who are experiencing exactly the same thing because it's exactly the same program.
Yeah, and specific, not trauma victims. We're talking about specific mind control. Yeah,
right. So it's specifically about that, but it is important.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I mean, regardless of whether this was an implanted program or not, for anyone who goes through those periods, I guess your message is that this too shall pass, right? We have to make it through every day, and then every week, and then every month, and then finally the storm passes, the internal storm passes. and one's able to find things that make it all worthwhile, which is your message now, right? Because you've got these beautiful children, you've got a productive life, you're helping a lot of other people. I mean, you're much more fortunate where you are right now than many, 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 many others out there.
Well, actually, I'm very grateful for my experiences. If you listen to Eckhart Tolle, and he talks about the pain body and how people who have the biggest pain body will be the ones who are the most motivated to let go of it. And that would be me. And I can look back at other people who, I might have been a little envious of, thinking that, oh gosh, they didn't go through this and this and this. But then I see that they don't have the level of motivation that I have to improve, because it's not painful enough.
Right. So again, you're saying that this is, in a weird kind of way, it's part of the gift that you referred to earlier, because this has actually been the motivation for you to develop so much spiritually, you could say, because I guess you had to.
Absolutely, and I can say this 100%, that my experience was a gift. And it's empowered me to have the strength and the willpower to go and spread this around, to spread the gift, the realizations and the power of knowing that we all are very powerful creative beings. This is our true reality. But most people think that we're just these bags of bones walking around, and we're way, way beyond that. And then also, this makes me think about going back to the spiritual component, that it's absolutely essential to choose a spiritual path, whether you go out to find a teacher or you find a certain system of meditation, whatever it is that appeals to you, to bring you on your spiritual path. This is so, so important. And what I'd like to inform people, just because you're sitting here breathing and you're alive, means that you have been supported, because these human bodies are so very, very, very fragile that nobody would be alive unless they had lots of support. So that's another thing to going back to visiting people who are going through that cycle of discovery and shock and pain, to know that they're alive right now because they have been supported. They are supported. And that is another thing to know, is that, oh my gosh, I've got all this support. Then maybe if I pay more attention to my support instead of where I have deficits, then maybe I can expand that experience, because whatever you focus upon, you expand. And now this becomes a balancing act, because you need to recognize what needs to be rectified. But then you move right in and you think, okay, solution oriented. This is what I need to do. Be focused on the possibility. Be focused on whatever you want to expand in your experience, because what you focus upon, you do expand. This is the difficult part of getting out of those first stages, is because you're so focused on the pain. If you have chronic pain, whether it's emotional or physical or both, you tend to be very focused on it. Well, if you're focused on it, it's going to expand in your experience. This is really difficult when you're at that stage. So how do I get myself out of focusing on this pain? Then you have to just be mindful. Oh yeah, okay, the pain is there. Let me focus on, what do I really want in my life? What do I really want? And visualize, the power of visualization and fantasy. This is very interesting, that the Illuminati themselves value fantasy more than reality.
Yes, it has a way of informing their reality and creating their reality.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. And they understand the powerful processes.
And the rest of us want to think that we're realists, and so we keep focusing on what we have instead of envisioning what kind of world do we want to have, what kind of life do we want to have, and that we have that power of creation. And this is the most fantastic time to be alive on the planet, because there is so much energy behind this power of human creativity right now, that this is the time of possibility, of really, really breaking out and changing the way the world functions. And it all begins with each of us as individuals. We've all been traumatized as a collective. You know, all the wars, and, you know, if you go through history, we've been traumatized over and over and over again. Well, we have a chance to re-script that now. We have a chance to transform. So this is for the greater numbers out there. It's not just whatever you do at an individual level can be expanded to the greater population.
So this is a really important thing that you're saying here. You're saying that your individual journey can actually be mapped onto the whole human race. The human race has been traumatized. The human race has been abused. The planet has been traumatized. The planet has been abused. And we have it in our collective gift to transform that too, in exactly the same way as you've been describing.
Yeah, my life is like a microcosm of the journey of humanity, going from a very dark place and going through these realizations, and then understanding that I have the power myself to change, and that I need to make the decision to take responsibility for where that change is going to take me, and move into forgiveness. So, you know, collectively, we need to forgive all of the atrocities of the past and acknowledge them and then forgive them, so that we can all move on into transformation. And that's a whole other discussion. But it's very powerful. I was rethinking, I don't want my dad's picture in there. It is not relevant to this discussion, but the picture of me with the kitty cat might be nice.
We can make all those decisions later.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. I just want to throw this at you. You've talked about forgiveness. For some people, that's a mighty concept to wrestle with. And sometimes it's easy to talk about, and sometimes it's a little harder to put into practice. I know that your father passed away when you were still a girl. Mm-hmm. If you were able to say something to him now, what would you say?
Actually, I would use the Ho'oponopono prayer. I say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Because he went through stuff too. He wouldn't have done what he did unless something was done to him. He was just perpetuating the cycle.
I believe he was blackmailed, in fact.
I can't prove that, but I suspect that. And this also is a segue into the Illuminati themselves. They go through this. They go through this trauma in order to keep this cycle going. So it's like they're stuck in a pattern. And how wonderful would it be to forgive them and say, you know, it's possible for you to get out of your cycle of trauma. Because when somebody is a perpetrator, when you've got this perpetrator and victim thing going on, it's not good for either party. It's not beneficial to either party. And so we're all in this together. We're all in this together. And Shakespeare said, life is, what is it? Life is but a play, or life is a stage, and we're all actors. And he also said there's nothing that's either bad or good, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare was one bright fellow. And so we're all the same. So yeah, if he were standing right here, I could give him a hug and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you went through.
And I believe you've expressed the thought that the reason why you can say that is because you feel that right now, wherever he is, he may be suffering more than you.
Yes.
Not because he's in any kind of place of damnation, but because he hasn't got out of the cycle yet, whereas you pretty much have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that way, you're strongly suggesting we can feel compassion for our abusers, because they're still stuck in this cycle and they're not going to be able to get out of it anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the opportunity for people who've experienced bad things at the hands of the abusers is that we have the choice to be able to transform.
Yes, and like I said, forgiveness is love, looking at an incident without assigning blame. There's no blame on anybody. We're all here we're all here in the matrix, if you will, experiencing stuff. If we want to know what forgiveness is about, then we have to experience something to forgive. If we want to learn about forgiveness, we need to experience something that we have to forgive. If we want to learn about loyalty and betrayal, then we have to have an experience of betrayal so that we can understand what loyalty is all about. We learn through opposites. We learn about love through experiencing hate, etc., etc. So this is all a big classroom.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, Cathy, thank you so much.
Okay.
There's an enormous quantity of wisdom here to be absorbed from your experience, and I really want to thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing this with everybody. Appreciate that.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you. I can barely speak.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious dear that grace appeared the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior, Amazing grace, how sweet